Yes, welcome to our first video on web designing. We shall particularly look at CSS and HTML in this first video, where we shall develop a simple interface that users can use for logging in. The applications that you need here are WAMP server and Sublime text editor or any editor that you have. So the first step is to create the folder in your root directory that is in the WAMP server. So you open your folder, then you go to drive C, then you look for WAMP. Then inside the www directory, you create your folder there. In your names, then inside this main folder, you'll create another folder that we shall use for keeping our CSS files. So we can call it data underscore CSS. This where we shall create our CSS files. So after creating these folders, you go to the start menu, then you look for Sublime, open it. So you'll have this blank interface, then go to File, Save As, then look for the directory in your drive C where you created your main folder, that is the WAMP. So you go to C, then you look for WAMP, then the folder that you created inside the www directory, this is where you'll create the file. So we shall call it index.php. So this is our landing page with the file extension PHP. So you click on the save button. Then we can also straight away create the CSS file as well. So you go to File, Save As, then you open the data underscore CSS folder, then you call this style.css. This is the extension for the cascading style sheet. So we save it there. So when we check back into our folder, we have index.php, so we shall open it. So we shall start by writing some HTML code that we shall then later style using the CSS file that we have created here. So let's get started. So you'll put the less than symbol here, which is the tag, then exclamation mark, then you type doc type, meaning the document type is HTML. So this helps the web browser to read our content that we'll have created. That is the hypertext markup language. So after having done that, we can start by opening our main tag, which is HTML. Press the enter key. So we shall have this HTML syntax written. So each must have the opening and closing tag. As you can see, there is the opening tag here for HTML and closing here. Then the header section has the same opening and closing. So in the title bar here, that's where we shall put, for example, what you're seeing here as new tab. That is what we put here on the title. That's what we want to appear on our interface. Therefore, on the title, we shall type there user login. That is something that will appear right here, just the way you see this right there, the tab name there. So we have already given the title name. So next, in the header section, that's where we can reference to any other file that we shall use at any point. For example, we need to reference the CSS styles from the style.css. Therefore, straight away, we need to do that right here. So how do you do it? You open the tag, then you type link. So we are linking with the relationship type called style sheet, and the type is text or CSS. The hyperreference is the name of the file that we created here in the CSS, which is style.css. So, but it is in the folder called data_css. Therefore, we shall say data_css / then the file name, which is style.css. So style.css. Okay. So we have already created that particular link to that area. So let's assign an ID here, which we shall use later when we are formatting this particular page using CSS. So we shall call it body. Then we are going now to start building the div tags. So we shall start with the first div tag, which is the main div tag. We shall give it a class name. So we shall say class. So you type class. Then the class name will be main wrapper. Underscore index. So that will be our div class name. Then we open another div. So divisions or div tags are used for creating divisions within our web page. So this is the main container or division. Then this other division is inside that particular main container. So we shall also give it a class name. Remember, we said IDs, classes, and HTML elements are used as selectors when we are styling our page, as you will see later when you are looking at CSS. So we shall call that content wrapper underscore home. Content wrapper underscore home. So that is the one that will contain our content inside right here. So we start by doing some styling of our div. So we shall say the next div tag that we shall open, we shall give it a style here. So we say style. So this is called inline styling when we are styling in CSS. So we shall say text alignment. We want to align our text to the center. Then the width, want it to be 100 pixels or 100%. So we use semicolons to separate the different styles that we have created. Then the margin, that is the bottom margin. We should give it 10 pixels. Then we use the semicolon there. Okay. So we shall also give our form some small title using the span. So can have this on the same row, no problem. So we shall give it also some property. So we shall call it user login. Then we give it some properties. Style, that is the font size. I give it 18 pixels. So this particular div was to contain this particular heading that we shall give our form, and that form is what we are going to now build right here. So we shall open the form tag, which is form, right there. Then the form, we shall give it the ID. So we shall say ID is form1. Then we shall give it a name. These are properties, so the name also will be form1. Then the method of posting content from here, we shall call it post. We shall appreciate the use of this later when you start on PHP. Then the action, meaning that when we click on it, what should happen. For now, let's just hash it, implying that when we click on that particular form, something should happen or we should open a given page. But for this case, let's just use the hashtag for now. Okay, so now that we have created the form, we need to start creating the form elements, such as the text boxes and the rest of the elements like buttons and others that we shall create. So to organize those elements as well, we shall need to use the div tags again to be able to make this proper organization. So we shall say div then all of them we shall give the same property, which is style, that is the bottom margin. We want to create spaces between the text boxes, so we shall say margin bottom. We shall give it 15 pixels, such that our text boxes don't look intact. There should be some space between them. Okay, so the first element we are putting is a text box. So here type, you just type text, implying text box. Then we shall give it a name, user. That's where the users will type their usernames. Then ID, just in case we would like to use the ID later. So we shall call that USR, meaning user, just to create a difference between it and the name. Then the placeholder is what the users see. That is the same as somebody using a label. For the placeholder, it prompts or shows the user what they are supposed to type in that particular field. So we shall say username. Then we shall give it a class called login text. Login underscore text. So we shall use this particular class name when we are styling our page. So now to create the next div tag, which is for password, you simply copy this up to this point, copy, then you paste it right below here, then you rename. Okay, so the type this time is password. If you leave it as text, the password will be visible, so we are going to call it password. Then the name, we shall also call it the same, password. Then the ID, we shall say pwd, meaning password still, so you type there pwd, meaning password. Then the placeholder will be password. So to view what you have so far done, make sure that your WAMP server is on. Mine is on right here. If you're using the other version, it should be showing in white right there. So you go to your browser, then you type localhost, then the name of the folder. So localhost /, then the name of the folder. So that was the name of the folder that I created. So when you press the enter key, it should be able to load your index page. So far this is what you have created. As you can see, everything is looking scattered, but when we do the CSS styling, everything will look fine. So let's proceed with the remaining elements. So far we have created the text box for username, then also the text box for password. So we move to the next item, which is the next element, that is the button. So we can still copy this, click at the end of this div tag. So you highlight from this point up to that point, click at the end of this div tag, press the enter key, then you paste. So this property will remain the same, that is the bottom margin should still be 15 pixels. So this time our input type is submit, meaning we are dealing with the button now, the submit button. So you change it to submit. Then the name is button, so we give it that name, button. Right there. Then you can also give it ID. Still we can call it button. Then the value, this time not the placeholder. Value means what should be displayed on the button, the name of the button. So that's what you're calling the value. So we shall call it sign in. Then the class, we shall call it login button. So if we go to our browser and refresh, should be able to see the button right here. So that is what we have just created right here, which is the login button. So now we need to go ahead and include other components, that is the forgot password option and remember me option. So we're going to create another div tag right here. So you say div, then we shall use the span. So we shall give it a class. So the class name will be span as well. Then here, where we're supposed to put the content, we shall make it a hyperlink. So you put the less than symbol, then a. This means the hyperlink. So you press the enter key. Where are we referencing to? We are going to hash it as well for now. We shall put the link later. So which value do you want to be displayed here? We say forgot password. Okay. So if we go and refresh our browser, so you'll find it right here. So that is the hyperlink that you have created using the hyperlink element, which is a, and hyperreference hash, implying that we have not yet created that particular page, but we shall create it later. So let's also create another span for the checkbox and the remember me option. So we'll say span, shall give it the same class name as this. So we shall say class span as well. Then values here, input type. This time we need a checkbox, so you just type checkbox. Then the name is remember. And the value, we shall put 01 for now. We shall refer to it later. Then here we shall close it using the /. Then in between here we shall create some space using the space that is NBSP for spacing. Then we type remember me, meaning we are creating the space between this checkbox and this particular word remember me. So you type remember me. So far so good. You can check. So we have everything right here. Okay. So now we have created our HTML interface. Now I want to style it such that it can look good, just the way we want. Okay. So let's get started with that, the styling. Okay. So you go to your CSS file, and we are going to start by using the universal selector, which is the asterisk. Then you use the curly braces. So you put the asterisk, which is the star, then the curly braces. Then we can put the preliminary properties. So we can say box hyphen sizing, then we say border box. Then padding, this is the distance between our margin and the content. So the padding, we say 0 pixels, or we can just say 0. Okay. Then the margin, can also say 0. Please make sure that you put a 0, not letter O. Okay. Then the next is the body. Remember we said HTML selectors, elements can also be used as selectors. So the one we're using this time is the body. So you say font family right here. So we say you open the quotes, double quotes. So we shall have Helvetica, new, and you put a comma outside the quotes, then you type Helvetica, then comma, Arial, then comma, and you type sans serif, and you put a semicolon. Okay. Then we have the font size. Font size, you can say 13 pixels. Then the line height, 1.6. Then letter spacing, you can say 0.1. Okay. Then we can also go to the next, which is the hyperlink as a selector. Then the color, we want to change it to white. So you can always get these color codes from the internet, so that you can use any of your choice. You can even type the word white as long as you spell it very well. So let's first confirm that actually our reference link here is coordinating with this. So let's go to the browser and refresh, and we see. So as you can see, our link is no longer visible here because we have given it the font color white. So meaning there's coordination between our PHP page and the CSS. So let's proceed and add in other styling. So you can say the first class, which is this one here, we can use this, that is login text. So you can copy this to make sure that you actually don't type it poorly. It's good to copy the class names and include here. And for us to use class as selector, you first put what you call a period or a dot, then you put the class name, then you open the curly braces. So we are using this to point at these two text boxes, the one for username and the one for password. So we're going to give it some properties and the respective values. The width, we shall give it a width of 80%. Then we shall give it a border property, which we shall say none. None implies that we don't want the border to be visible. Okay. But if you want the border to be visible, then you can give it some additional values. For example, now if I refresh this, you can see it has prolonged our text boxes, but the borders are not visible because we said none. But in case you want it to be visible, just to show you, you can say 1 pixel, then you can say it should be solid, for example, meaning you want it to be visible. So when you go and refresh, you should be able to see these borders right here, but that's not our aim. Okay, so this was just to show you what happens in case you want the borders to be visible. So let's go back to none, meaning we don't want the borders to be visible. Okay, so we proceed with other properties. So we shall have the height as 40 pixels, that is picture points. Then the font size, you can give it font size of 14 pixels. Then the background color, give it a background color, also white. Then the padding of 5 pixels. Then the color, you can say 5. So we have styled our text boxes. As you can see, the height is now 40 pixels. So let's proceed and style our button as well. So the selector for our button is login button right here. So we shall copy it. Then, like I said, if it is a class, you first put a period or a dot, then you put your class name. Okay. So we give it also some properties. You can say the width, you can give it the same width as slightly longer than the text boxes. You can say 83%. Then you can also give it the border property, just like the one we gave the text boxes. You can say the border here is also not visible. Okay, then the height of our button, you can also give it the same, 40 pixels. Then the font size, you can say 15 pixels. Then the background color, you can give it the color code D2 9013. So you can always find all these color codes on the internet, and you pick the one of your choice and use when you're styling your work. Then the padding, we shall give it the padding of 5 pixels. Then the font color, still white. Okay, so if we save the changes and go and check on our button, so we can see the color has started to take shape. So let's proceed. We want to include another property such that when we hovering means when you pass the cursor over this particular button, it changes the color. For example, now you can see it is not performing any activity, but after we have applied the hover characteristic, then we shall be able to see some change. So we shall still use the same class name, but this time we need to add in the hover property, that when we hover over our button, certain things happen. Okay, so the font color should change to black. Then we also want that when we hover, the background color changes as well. Then the cursor should also change to a pointer, something that looks like a finger pointing. Then we also want that when we hover, the border is visible this time. So when we hover over that button, we make sure that the border is visible. So like I illustrated earlier, you can see it should be solid, should be 1 pixel, and should be black in color. So when we test run this, you should be able to notice that change. So as you can see, when we hover, it shows some kind of gray color. Okay, and when you look at the cursor also carefully, it changes to something like a finger, as you can see. Okay, so let's proceed with the remaining styling. Okay, so now we are going to look at the main wrapper and also give it some style. So it's right here, so we shall copy that class name so that we don't make mistakes of typing. So like I said, you put the period, then you open the curly braces, then you can give it the properties as well. So we shall say the width will be 30% of our total screen width. Then the margin, meaning the distance between the borders, should be automatic. It should calculate 30% and find the remaining space and fix it in between there. Then the margin top, meaning from the top border, it should be 100 pixels. Meaning the distance between this particular word and this particular border you're seeing right here. That's what it means. So it should be 100 pixels. Then the background color, should have, so not background, just background color is what you're looking at. So background color should be, so like I said, you can get these color codes on the internet and you apply the one that pleases you. Okay, Then the border radius, meaning the distance between the border, assuming this, and the center. So we want to create some curved border on our main wrapper. Okay, so the border radius, we shall say 5 pixels. Then the padding, we shall say 50 pixels by 20 pixels by 50 pixels. Okay. So as you can see, it is starting to take shape. That is the beauty about CSS. It is starting to take place. So we shall now do work on the content wrapper such that everything is aligned properly and we center it, and we shall have our beautiful interface created, as you can see. So let's look at the last part of our styling. So this is the content wrapper, is what we want to look at. So still we shall go back to our HTML code and we copy this class name such that we don't have to make mistakes in typing. So we put the period, then we put it right there, then we apply the properties. So the width, you can say it should be 100%. Now we are talking about 100% in terms of the main wrapper. Okay, so should be 100%. Then the color should be white, that is the text color should be white. Then the margin should be automatic, should be able to center align everything by automatically determining the margin. So the margin should be auto. Then text alignment should be centered. So we can save the changes, save all. Then when you go and refresh, you can see a very beautiful interface. So thanks for watching. Make sure that you practice and repeat the video several times to be able to pick what we have just covered. Thank you.